This is the build I'm currently using for my DPS Apprentice in Nightmare 4. I've had a number of people request that I do a video on this and explain kind of my thoughts and reasonings for what I've done. And I will say that I've been doing this for about 5 to 6 days now, this build, and I'm pretty confident with where it's at. But there's chances it will change in the future, and if I do change things, I will make a new video. But for this patch and where we are currently, I like this build quite a bit. And I'll explain my reasoning why towards the end. To start, this is an ability power build that focuses on spamming Arcane Volley and some Tornado and some Mana Bomb, depending on the situation. So on my items, I'm focusing on hero damage and ability power, in which when I'm upgrading at the Enchanter, I max ability power over hero damage. So although I want high right click, I'm more worried about increasing my abilities to be the best they can be. So to start with that, I have my legendary weapon. This is a 700 eye power weapon. It's 4S. It has 3 split. I actually like the fact that it's split with this build because that means I can mark more targets with Arcane Volley. I'll explain that in a little bit. And so another prerequisite of this weapon that I have to have on a weapon is Arcanist. Increases maximum mark targets by 1. On helmet, I've got hero damage and ability power with the ability power upgraded. In channel, ideally this would have superconductor on it too, but if you can only get channel or superconductor, channel is better in my opinion based on the math of how they work. Even on this, on the Apprentice, not just the Huntress. I will say that you should be trying to get a superconductor on as many pieces as you can as well. This is in a hero damage and ability power chest piece, pretty straightforward. Same with boots. This actually has frosty power on it, but that's pretty much irrelevant. My gloves are hero damage and hero crit. I haven't found a good pair of ability power gloves yet, so this is where they stay. These gloves have service call. I think service call is mandatory. I will not use gloves without service call on it anymore in Nightmare 4, so keep that in mind. And finally, my ring, ability power, hero damage, and this is the other piece that can have Arcanist on it, so you need to make sure you have this as well here. I believe rings can get superconductor on it as well, so ideally, instead of hero crit chance, I'd have superconductor, and ancient magic is pretty good too. There's a passive I believe that increases tornado time, which is good if you can get that, and ancient magic is good. Anything that makes your abilities better, you should be looking for. But Arcanist is the #1 priority on your weapon and ring. Now I'll go for the spheres. Spheres are the same as my Huntress for the first 3. I do the hero damage, the hero crit chance, and the hero crit damage. For medium spheres, this is where there's maybe a little bit of variations. The first one I use, which I think is mandatory with this build, is increase mark targets by 2. The other one I use is the Apprentice cooldown reduced by 25%. Make sure you're using the Apprentice specific one. Didn't realize this existed at first because it was the same picture as the general 10% cooldown reduction one that works on every hero. But make sure you buy the Apprentice one. Now for the large sphere, there really isn't that good of a large sphere. There's 2 options. You can use, as I'm using, the Chilling Strike sphere, which is a 10% chance at hit to chill targets for 2 seconds, slowing them by 20%. Or you could use the Oiling Strike sphere, which does the same thing, except it oils them. Now, my reasoning for this, and this is where I'm not entirely sure because I don't have quite as much experience as I'd like. If a target is chilled and you're in the physical lane, I would think that if a trap procs chill too, or the ice, it will freeze instead of needing for that trap to proc twice. So that way you'll freeze a target on top of the traps a little bit longer. If it works that way. I don't entirely know. If someone knows better or has proved it, please leave a comment and I'll leave an annotation here. The other option is to use the Oiling Strikes. That when they're oiled, when traps set off in the flame or fire, this is elemental chaos, they should light on fire. So this would work also with Piercing Shot. I think Flamethrower Towers would work as well, or I'm not entirely sure about Blaze Balloon, would set targets on fire. I don't think targets being on fire does too much DPS. That's why I've chosen to go for the Chilling Strikes. That might change in the future. I'm hoping Trendy adds some more dedicated DPS spheres in, but currently there aren't any. And that's part of what makes this class weaker than Huntress. I don't use the anti-air spheres for this because I have a 3-split weapon, or the 3-shot weapon, so it splits into 3. So I can't target air well at all. I need Huntress to do that. An alternate build for DPS Apprentice would be to go with a burst weapon, 4S burst like Huntress, and put on anti-air spheres and kind of try and build like a Huntress. But if you're building like a Huntress, why bother? Why not just use a Huntress, which is better? So that's kind of my opinion on it, and that's part of the reason why I'm doing this build. Now, I've talked about the marking targets earlier. The way marking targets work is, in order to use your second ability, you actually have to attack something first. So if I come down here and try and attack these dummies, I can't, you see it says can't currently activate Arcane Volley. But if I attack once, I've marked this target, and now it uses it. So, by increasing the number of targets that I have marked, I increase my DPS output significantly. So that's both the reason why I have the items and the sphere that increases that. Because I am doing, I believe, right around 47,000. Sorry, let me take my pet off so that you can actually see. 47,000 per hit with my 46,000. It goes up to about 47 when I have my pet on, per Arcane Volley. So by adding 4 more targets, that's, you know, north of 160,000 extra damage. And that's another reason why I think this is better than a auto attack build, is that if I'm hitting 7 targets for over 40,000 apiece, that's over 420,000. Divide that by 4, and that puts me at like 100,000 DPS just from abilities. And that's why I'm using the 25% cooldown reduction sphere, so that Arcane Volley on a 4-second cooldown, I can spam the hell out of it. And now to go back to the marking, you can see when they have those little circles above them, they're marked. And this way I can mark a lot at once, because the mark doesn't last too long. So even ideally, I would try and get, I believe there are 5 shot bows versus 3. I've been looking for one. I haven't seen a good one yet. I would probably switch to that if I could find one. And another reason why marking targets is good is that if we do that, it does, we'll say 4,500. It might increase a little bit. Nope. But if I mark it, oh, I gotta wait for it to come off cooldown. It's now doing 67. The way Tornado works is part of the effect is that when a target is marked, it does increase damage. So that was like a 50% increase in damage because the target's marked. So you really want to be marking as many targets as possible, and you'll be doing significantly more DPS. I'll say that I use Tornado a little bit sparingly. If you're spamming as many Tornadoes and as many Arcane Volleys as you can, you're probably going to run out of mana, and that's where Superconductor becomes really important. Or you might consider using a Mana Sphere instead of maybe the cooldown sphere, but I think you'd lose too much DPS that way. So I think the spheres are kind of, the medium spheres at least, are kind of set with this build. And finally, I'll talk about our Mana Bomb a little bit. I don't use Mana Bomb too much. I never use it for single targets like bosses. I will only ever use it when I can kind of work myself into a position where there are a ton of enemies grouped up, particularly if Javelin Throwers or Dark Mages or / Books / Mini Malthius guys, whatever you want to call them, are holding like a big mob of enemies up. I'll try and go Mana Bomb that. But it costs 100 mana without Superconductor, so you get 2.5 of them without any mana regen. And it's on a pretty long cooldown, so I use it sparingly. But I'm trying to spam Arcane Volley every 4 seconds. So just keep that in mind. And I guess I'll look at my pet real quick since I tried to go over this earlier. I'll actually have to put it back on real quick. It's ability powered hero damage. Make sure you have those 2 on it. And I'll show you that I'm only doing, right now, 37, 32. I think I averaged about 32 to 33,000 damage with right clicks. When I went for a full hero damage and burst build, I was only doing like 46, 47,000 damage, so still not very much. And that's why I kind of decided on the ability power build. I think it's way better right now. So that about wraps this up, really. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them and I'll get back to you. As I said, if I find that this build has changed or if I find something better, I will do another video and put a link to it right here or a little bit earlier when I mentioned it too, and in the comments. Thanks, guys.